It was Father's Day when the package arrived, wrapped in bright paper and labeled like some kind of cheerful surprise from my daughter. I had just set it on the kitchen counter when my wife glanced at the box, went pale, and leaned close enough to whisper, "Do not open that." I frowned at her. "What are you talking about? Why would you say that?" "Look again," she murmured, her voice tight. I bent closer, really looked this time, and my body locked up in place. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like the floor vanished beneath me. 10 minutes later, police lights washed red and blue across our front windows. What was inside that box still makes my hands shake when I think about it. But this mess did not start that day. It started weeks earlier during a conversation that shattered something in our family beyond repair. "Dad, do you even understand that I need the money now?" my daughter snapped. "Not after you are dead." The ceramic mug slipped from her fingers and exploded against the hardwood floor. Coffee splashed outward, staining the antique rug beneath it. Dark liquid soaked into the fibers we had imported years ago. My daughter, Lauren, stood frozen, her face blazing red, her manicured hand trembling where the mug had been. I clutched the estate paperwork tighter, my fingers crushing the edges. 30 years of planning, saving, and discipline had turned into ammunition in my child's hands. The pages crackled as my grip tightened. "Lauren," I said, forcing calm into my voice, "I am not a cash machine. You will receive your inheritance when the time comes." Her husband, Evan, sank deeper into the brown leather couch, stretching out like he owned the place. A lazy grin spread across his face. "Relax, Mark. She is your only kid. What is a few $1,000s to help us breathe?" A few thousand. The audacity made my jaw tighten. A month earlier, it was his poker losses. Before that, it was Lauren's credit card balances from designer shopping sprees. Every request came wrapped in urgency, and each one demanded more than the last. "Help you breathe?" I pushed myself upright, my 70-year-old knees burning in protest. "I have been helping you for 3 straight years. My retirement savings are not your personal line of credit." My wife, Linda, appeared at the edge of the room, twisting a dish towel between her fingers like a lifeline. "Please," she said softly, "let us all calm down. We can talk through this." "Calm down?" Lauren spun toward her mother. "He is sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars while we are drowning." "Drowning because of your own choices," I replied quietly. "Your own decisions." The framed family photo on the mantel lay face down. I did not know whether it had been knocked over during Lauren's outburst or intentionally turned away. The silver edge caught the overhead light, reflecting nothing but a harsh glare. Evan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Look, Mark, you're not getting younger. Why not enjoy seeing your money used while you're alive? At least then you get credit for it." Not getting younger. The words tasted sour. Coming from a man who had never kept steady work, who bounced from scheme to scheme while living off my daughter and my occasional generosity. "Because I earned it," I said, each syllable heavier than the last. 43 years of 12-hour days, missed holidays, missed dinners, canceled vacations, all so you could grow up comfortable, Lauren, so your mother and I could retire with some dignity." "Dignity?" Lauren laughed, sharp and bitter. "What is dignified about hoarding money while your daughter suffers?" "Suffers?" My eyes flicked to her designer purse resting on the chair, her freshly highlighted hair, the gold bracelet on her wrist, Evan's brand-new shoes. Their hardship looked expensive. "You're suffering," is self-made. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Every emergency you bring me, every disaster, every crisis, you created them. Silence snapped tight, stretched thin enough to cut. Linda stepped fully into the room, her face drained of color. "Mark," she whispered, "maybe we should—" "Should what?" Lauren cut in, her voice splintering. "Keep pretending he is a loving father instead of a greedy miser? Keep enabling his control?" The accusations landed like punches. Greedy, cold, unloving. After decades of sacrifice, this was how I was seen. Evan stood, his expression hardening into something openly hostile. "You know what I think? I think you enjoy watching us struggle, makes you feel important. Get out." The command rose from somewhere deep in my chest. "Both of you, leave my house." "My house?" Lauren's eyes glittered. "This house Mom helped pay for, the house I grew up in, you do not get to throw me out. Watch me." They did not move. They waited, like they always did, for me to cave, for the apology, for the compromise, for another check to buy temporary peace. Not this time. I walked to the front door and swung it open. Evening air rushed in, cool and sweet, carrying the smell of jasmine and distant laughter from neighboring homes. Other families enjoying quiet nights together. When had we last laughed like that? "Lauren," I said without turning around, "take your husband and go. Do not come back until you are ready to talk respectfully about your finances and solutions that do not involve my money." "You will regret this," she hissed, snatching her purse. "When you are old and sick and alone, remember this moment. Remember choosing money over your daughter." Her heels cracked against the floor like gunshots as she stormed out. Evan followed, pausing at the doorway. "This is not over," he muttered. "Family does not abandon family." The door slammed hard enough to shake the windows. The quiet afterward felt heavier than the shouting. I stood motionless, hand clenched around the brass handle. Through the frosted glass, I watched Lauren's black SUV reverse violently down the driveway, tires screeching as she peeled away. Linda's footsteps approached behind me. "Mark?" I turned slowly. The living room looked ravaged. Coffee stains bled into the anniversary rug we bought 2 decades earlier. Legal papers lay scattered across the floor. The overturned photo frame caught the lamplight, its reflection mocking me. 43 years, I murmured. "What did you say?" she asked. 43 years I worked, I said, my voice breaking. Overtime during her teenage years so she could have new clothes, college tuition, that car she wanted at 16, the wedding we could not afford but paid for anyway. Linda knelt, carefully gathering the documents one by one. "She is struggling," she said gently. "The gambling issue—" "It is still her decision," I said, the edge in my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Every trip to a casino, every online wager, every excuse about where the money disappeared, those were all her choices. I crossed the living room and straightened the framed photograph on the mantel. A much younger Lauren stared back at me, 5 years old, missing 2 front teeth and grinning ear to ear as she sat on my shoulders at a summer county fair in northern Ohio. She had been so light then, laughing at everything, trusting the world without question. I wondered when that joyful little girl had turned into someone who could look at her own father and demand his life savings without a trace of shame. "Do you remember the Christmas she wanted that dollhouse?" I asked, resting my fingers against the glass. "The huge one from that expensive toy shop downtown. I worked double shifts for nearly 2 months just to afford it. Linda did not answer because she did not need to. We both remembered. We remembered the ballet classes, the summer camps, the name-brand shoes because all her friends had them. Every sacrifice had been made willingly, even proudly, because it was for our daughter. And now, I continued quietly, she smashes coffee mugs because I will not hand over my retirement. She did not throw it at you, Linda said gently. She dropped it on the floor. The distinction meant nothing to me. The aggression was the same. Whether the mug was aimed at my chest or shattered at my feet, the disrespect did not change. I bent down and picked up one of the estate documents scattered across the hardwood. The dense legal wording blurred in front of my eyes, but I knew every section by memory. Decades of cautious investing, delayed pleasures, and financial discipline, all built so Lauren would never struggle after we were gone. "It is Evan's influence," Linda said softly. "He puts these ideas in her head about what we owe her." "He did not invent her greed," I replied. "He just gave it permission to come out." The truth settled heavily between us. Our daughter had become someone we barely recognized, and we had played our part by always rescuing her, writing checks, fixing disasters, smoothing over consequences instead of letting her face them. My phone vibrated in my pocket. The number was unfamiliar, but the writing style was unmistakable. "Dad, I hope you're satisfied. Children need winter coats and school supplies, but apparently your precious savings matter more than your grandchildren. Do not expect to see them anytime soon." I closed my eyes. The grandchildren, Lauren's most reliable weapon. Olivia and Noah, 7 and 5 years old, innocent, bright, and completely unaware they were being used as leverage in their mother's campaign for money. She knew exactly how to hurt me. I handed the phone to Linda. As she read the message, her face collapsed. "She would not really keep them from us," she whispered. But we both knew she would. She had done it before, during smaller disagreements. A week without visits, then 2. Every time we hesitated to give her what she wanted, the children became bargaining chips. "Mark," Linda said carefully, "maybe we should think about this again." "No." The word came out hard and final. "No more. I will not be blackmailed with my grandchildren. I will not teach them that love is something you buy or that family is a financial transaction." Linda recoiled slightly. In nearly 4 decades of marriage, she had rarely seen me like this. Even during our worst arguments, I had never spoken with such icy certainty. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. Something about who our daughter had become and the future I thought we were building together. The illusion of noble sacrifice shattered just as completely as that coffee mug. My phone vibrated again. 6 days later, I sat on our front porch early Sunday morning, the newspaper folded across my lap, trying to cling to the comfort of routine. It was Father's Day again. The coffee in my mug had gone cold, but I held it anyway, watching the quiet street come to life. Across the road, the Millers loaded their minivan for a day trip. A few houses down, an older couple worked side by side in their garden, laughing softly. Normal families, normal mornings. Inside, I could hear Linda moving around the kitchen, the faint clink of plates and silverware drifting through the open window. We had spent the week talking carefully, circling around the Lauren-shaped absence in our lives. There had been no calls, no messages, no surprise appearances demanding forgiveness or money. The silence was unsettling. In 3 years of constant emergencies, Lauren had never stayed quiet this long. Usually, within days, she would reach out with apologies followed by smaller requests, easing her way toward the next major demand. This time felt intentional, measured, like the stillness before something ugly. Part of me felt relief. Another part felt dread. The low growl of an engine pulled me from my thoughts. I looked up to see a brown delivery truck slowing in front of our house. That was unusual. We were not expecting anything, and Sunday deliveries almost never happened unless someone paid extra. The driver climbed out, checked his handheld device, and lifted a medium-sized box from the back. He walked up the steps with the brisk efficiency of someone working a holiday shift. "Mark Reynolds?" he asked. "That is me." "Happy Father's Day," he said, handing over the package and his electronic pad. "Someone paid extra to make sure this arrived today." I signed, watching him return to the truck. There was no return address on the label, just standard shipping information. The box was about the size of a shoebox, but it felt strangely light in my hands, no more than a couple of pounds. For reasons I could not explain, a tight knot formed in my chest as I carried it inside. "Who is it from?" Linda called out from the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel as she stepped closer. "I have no idea," I replied. I carried the box inside and set it gently on the coffee table, the same spot where my inheritance papers had been scattered across the surface less than a week earlier. Seeing it there sent a quiet shiver through me. "No return address?" Linda asked as she approached, her curiosity already edged with caution. She had always been more skeptical than I was about unexpected deliveries. Years of news stories about mail fraud and dangerous packages had left their mark on her. "Maybe it is from the kids," she offered, but even as she said it, her voice lacked confidence. Olivia had asked about Father's Day the last time we saw the grandchildren, back before Lauren had turned them into leverage, before the threats and ultimatums poisoned everything. I shoved the thought aside. "Could be," I said, though something in my gut disagreed. The timing felt too precise, too deliberate, and Olivia certainly had not paid extra for Sunday delivery. Linda leaned in closer, studying the box with the same careful attention she gave everything, from reading food labels to solving crossword puzzles. Her fingers traced the shipping label, then froze. "Mark," she said slowly, "do not open that." "Why?" I asked. She pointed to the side of the box, something I had completely missed while carrying it. "Do you see those little holes?" I followed her finger, and my stomach dropped. "They are air holes," she continued, "which means something inside needs to breathe." Now that she had pointed them out, I could see them clearly. Tiny punctures in the cardboard, neat and intentional. Someone had taken the time to make them. "Breathing holes," I repeated dully. "Yes," she said, already stepping back from the table. "That means something alive is in there." We stood in the middle of our living room, staring at the harmless-looking package as though it might suddenly leap toward us. The morning sunlight streaming through the windows no longer felt comforting. The quiet suburban calm felt wrong, fragile. "Who would send us something alive?" Linda whispered. Before I could answer, a cold certainty settled in my chest. The Father's Day timing, the lack of a return address, the paid Sunday delivery meant to catch us home and unguarded. This was not a gift. A faint sound came from inside the box, a soft rustle that stopped both of us cold, then silence. Linda grabbed my arm, her nails pressing through the fabric of my polo shirt. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded. I did not trust myself to speak. Whatever was inside that box was alive and waking up. A soft hissing sound slipped through the cardboard, barely audible but unmistakable. We froze, eyes locked on the package as if it might detonate. Then the sound stopped again. The silence stretched painfully thin, and then it came back, longer this time. A clear, unmistakable hiss that sent ice racing through my veins. Linda's grip tightened until it hurt. "Mark," she breathed, "call someone, now!" My hand shook as I pulled out my phone. Muscle memory took over while my mind struggled to keep up. 911, what is your emergency? Yes, I said quickly. We have a suspicious package in our home. Something alive is inside it. It was delivered this morning, I continued, words tumbling over each other. No return address, and it is making noises. Sir, can you describe the sounds? I glanced at Linda. She nodded. Hissing, I said. I stopped myself. Like a snake. I could not bring myself to say it. Are there any visible signs of damage to the package? No obvious damage, I answered, my voice cracking. But there are small holes punched in the cardboard. Air holes. Understood, the dispatcher said. I am sending officers to your location immediately. Please keep a safe distance from the package and do not attempt to open it. Can you move to another room? We are about 6 feet away in the living room, I said. Should we leave the house? Stay inside but maintain distance. Officers will arrive within 10 minutes. Do not touch or move the package. The line stayed open, the dispatcher's typing audible in the background. 10 minutes felt like an eternity when something potentially dangerous sat on your coffee table, growing more active by the second. After I hung up, Linda finally asked the question we had both been avoiding. Who would do something like this? The answer pressed against my throat, heavy and bitter. Saying it out loud would make it real. It would mean admitting that our daughter had crossed a line I never imagined she could. I am afraid to guess, I said quietly. But my thoughts were already there, connecting dots I did not want connected. The argument, the threats, the Father's Day delivery, someone who knew our address, our routines, our weak points, someone angry enough to plan something this calculated and cruel. Another sound came from the box, louder this time. Not just hissing, but movement, something shifting inside the confined space. Linda took another step backward. The fight, she said softly. 6 days ago. She was furious when she left. I did not answer. I did not need to. She did not need to say Lauren's name. We were both thinking it, arriving at the same terrifying conclusion from different directions of fear and logic. But this, I gestured toward the box on the coffee table. This is not just anger. This is something else. The word hovered between us, unspoken but unmistakable. Revenge. It felt too vile to say out loud, yet impossible to deny. Our daughter, the child we had raised, supported, protected, and loved despite every flaw, had sent us something meant to terrify us, possibly to hurt us. The box shifted again, louder this time. Whatever was inside was fully awake now, likely confused, maybe agitated by our voices and the vibrations around it. What kind of person does this to their own parents? Linda's voice cracked as she asked the question. Someone desperate, I said, though even as the words left my mouth, they felt insufficient. Someone who believes they have been wronged. But deep down, I knew desperation alone did not explain this. This took planning, calculation, a level of intent that pointed to something deeply fractured between parent and child. Lauren had not simply exploded in anger. She had designed something meant to psychologically terrorize us. The slam of car doors outside made both of us flinch. Through the front window, I saw a police cruiser parked in our driveway. Two uniformed officers walked toward the house with purposeful, measured strides, the walk of people trained to deal with danger. Relief hit me so hard my knees nearly buckled. Help had arrived. Trained professionals. Soon, whatever nightmare sat in that innocent-looking box would no longer be ours to manage. The doorbell rang, sharp, commanding, cutting through the tension in our home. I opened the door before the officer could knock again. He filled the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, alert in a way that spoke of experience. The nameplate on his uniform read, R. Mallory. "Mr. Reynolds?" he asked. "I am Officer Ryan Mallory. We received a call about a suspicious package." "Yes," I said quickly. "Thank you for coming so fast. It is in the living room." He nodded and stepped inside, wiping his boots carefully on the mat before crossing the threshold. Linda appeared in the hallway, still wearing her apron, her hands clenched together. "Officer, we are so grateful you are here," she said. "We did not know what else to do." "You did exactly the right thing, ma'am," he replied calmly. "Can you show me the package?" We led him into the living room. The box sat on the coffee table, looking smaller now somehow, less powerful in the presence of authority. Officer Mallory approached cautiously, pulling a pair of latex gloves from his belt. "When did this arrive?" he asked. "About half an hour ago," I said. "Sunday delivery. Someone paid extra." He examined the label without touching the box. No return address. "And you heard noises?" "Hissing," Linda said softly. Like a snake?" Officer Mallory finished evenly. "I have seen this before. Usually non-venomous, but we treat every situation as potentially dangerous." He lifted his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. Requesting animal control to 1843 Willow Ridge Drive. Possible snake concealed in a delivered package." The radio crackled with confirmation. Animal control would arrive in approximately 20 minutes. Officer Mallory turned back to us, his tone shifting from procedure to inquiry. "Do you have any idea who might have sent this?" The question landed exactly where I feared it would. I felt Linda's eyes on me. "I honestly do not know," I said carefully. "It could be some kind of prank." His gaze sharpened slightly. "A prank like this requires access to a live animal, proper packaging, shipping funds, and your address. That suggests planning." My mouth went dry. "Have you had any recent disputes?" he asked. "Family conflicts? Arguments?" The phrase "family conflicts" hung in the air like an accusation. Linda stiffened beside me. We were balancing on a thin wire between truth and denial. "Nothing that would explain this," I said slowly. Officer Mallory studied my face, registering the hesitation, but he did not push. Instead, he pulled out a small notebook. "Have you noticed any unusual charges recently?" he asked. "Pet stores, reptile shops, exotic suppliers?" The words hit me like a punch to the chest. Pet stores. My memory snapped back with brutal clarity to a charge I had noticed weeks earlier on my credit card statement. Lauren had access to that card for emergencies. Reptile Haven, $127.50. I had assumed it was something for the grandchildren. Not this. Never this. "Mr. Reynolds?" Officer Mallory asked gently. "Are you feeling all right?" I forced my face into something neutral, though my heart was pounding hard enough to make my ears ring. "I am fine," I said. just trying to process everything. But I was not fine. The pieces were locking together with horrifying precision. The timing, the holiday, the anonymous delivery, the access to my card, the deliberate cruelty of choosing Father's Day. My daughter had sent me a snake. "Will you be filing a formal report?" Officer Mallory asked. The question hung in the air, heavy with consequences. "We can investigate where the package came from," Officer Mallory said evenly. "If we identify the sender, we can pursue charges." I looked at Linda and saw the same war playing out behind her eyes. A part of me wanted accountability, consequences, but the larger part, the part that had spent 34 years shielding Lauren, excusing her behavior, stepping in front of her mistakes, could not bring itself to hand my own daughter over to the police. "No," I said quietly. "I do not want to turn this into something bigger than it already is. If it was a prank, filing charges feels excessive." Officer Mallory nodded and made a note, though his expression told me he had heard this decision many times before. Family loyalty, overriding common sense, even when lines had clearly been crossed. Another vehicle pulled into our driveway. Through the front window, I saw a white van marked County Animal Control Services come to a stop. "That will be Mike Johnson," Officer Mallory said. "Best wildlife specialist we have. He will handle this safely." As I watched Mike unload his equipment, a cold realization settled in my chest. Whatever happened next would not be the end of this situation. It would only be the beginning. Mike Johnson worked with the calm precision of someone who had seen far stranger things than a boxed reptile in a suburban living room. Within 20 minutes, he had carefully opened the package, secured the animal, and confirmed what Officer Mallory suspected. "A 3-foot corn snake," Mike said, sealing the carrier. "Non-venomous. Harmless, really?" Harmless did not feel like the right word. "Someone paid good money for this one," he continued. "Corn snakes make excellent pets if handled responsibly. Shame someone used it for whatever message this was meant to send." He loaded the carrier into his van, destined for a reptile rescue facility. Officer Mallory shook our hands before leaving. "If anything else comes to mind, Mr. Reynolds, please call. Even so-called pranks can escalate if they are ignored." "I understand," I said, nodding, while darker thoughts churned behind my eyes. Soon, both vehicles disappeared down our quiet street, leaving Linda and me alone with the wreckage of the morning. The living room felt altered, violated, despite the professional cleanup. The coffee table showed faint watermarks where Mike had disinfected it. The inheritance documents had been stacked neatly again, but their meaning had changed. They were no longer symbols of careful planning. They were reminders of betrayal. Linda retreated to the kitchen, running water in the sink harder than necessary. Stress cleaning, her instinctive response to emotional overload. I stood at the front window, watching neighbors return from Father's Day outings. Laughter drifted from a nearby car loaded with picnic supplies. Normal families, normal Sundays, normal fathers who did not receive live animals from their children. The credit card charge burned in my mind. Reptile Haven, $127.50. 3 weeks earlier, right after our argument about money. Perfect timing. My phone felt heavier than it should as I opened Lauren's contact. Her photo stared back at me, smiling at Olivia's birthday party last year, before the demands intensified, before the threats about keeping the grandchildren away before today." "Are you really going to call her?" Linda asked softly from the kitchen doorway. "I need certainty," I said. "And if she admits it?" she asked. The question landed hard. What does a father do when his daughter crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed? I did not have an answer yet. The phone rang twice before Lauren picked up. "Dad!" Her voice was bright, too bright. The tone she used when she wanted something or was hiding something. "How is your Father's Day going?" My fingers tightened around the phone. "Interesting morning," I said calmly. "Lauren, you would not happen to know anything about a strange Father's Day delivery, would you?" "No," she replied quickly. "What happened?" The speed of her answer raised my suspicion, but it was what followed that destroyed any remaining doubt. In the background, I heard Evan laugh. Not a surprised laugh, not confusion. A quiet, satisfied snicker. It hit me like a blow to the chest. In that careless sound, everything became clear. My daughter had sent the snake. Her husband found it amusing. "Just a mix-up with a delivery," I said, forcing my voice steady. "Nothing important. I will let you go." "Are you sure everything is okay?" she asked. "You sound strange." Strange. I had just realized my own child had tried to terrorize me, and she thought I sounded odd. "Everything is fine," I said flatly. "Enjoy your Sunday." I ended the call before my composure could fracture. The phone trembled in my hand as the weight of what she had done finally settled in. Linda stepped beside me, reading my face without needing words. "You heard something," she said. "Yes," I replied, my voice hollow. Evan laughed in the background. "When you asked what happened," I said quietly, he laughed like it was the funniest thing he had ever heard. Linda's hand slid onto my arm, grounding me as the emotional terrain of our family shifted beneath our feet. She did not pull away. She did not speak right away. "What are you going to do?" she finally asked. I looked down at the phone still resting in my hand, then toward my home office at the end of the hall. Inside that room sat the computer that held access to everything: bank accounts, credit cards, payment portals, and all the financial lifelines that had kept Lauren afloat for the past 3 years. "I am going to teach my daughter about consequences," I said. By 7 o'clock that evening, I was seated in my home office with the door closed, the soft hum of the computer filling the quiet house. I had spent the afternoon walking our neighborhood, thinking carefully, replaying 3 decades of financial decisions that had led to this exact moment. The anger had cooled. What remained was colder, sharper, and far more deliberate. My desk was covered in proof of a father's misplaced generosity. Bank statements showed regular transfers covering Lauren's rent. Credit card bills I had paid without question. Insurance premiums. Car payments. Emergency loans that were never repaid. 30 years of rescuing her, all justified as love. Beside the keyboard lay a worn leather portfolio. Inside were documents I had reviewed countless times, copies of checks written for her wedding, receipts from the car I sold to cover her gambling losses, wire transfers labeled emergency assistance that had quietly become permanent monthly support. Every page told the same story. My daughter no longer saw me as a parent. She saw me as a financial resource. The computer screen glowed as I logged into our online banking system. My fingers moved calmly, typing passwords I had never shared with Lauren, though she had managed to benefit from them anyway. I opened the credit card account first, the same one that showed the reptile store charge from 3 weeks earlier. Lauren was listed as an authorized user, a privilege I had granted her during college for genuine emergencies. 20-year-old emergencies that had multiplied into a permanent lifestyle. I clicked Manage Users. Security prompts appeared. My mother's maiden name, the street I grew up on. Familiar answers. Simple keys to controls I should have used years ago. Remove authorized user? The screen asked in detached blue text. My cursor hovered over the confirmation button for several seconds, not because I doubted myself, but because I could feel something fundamental changing inside me. 30 years of funding your irresponsibility. Enough. I clicked User access revoked. Changes will take effect within 1 business hour. Next came the personal identification number updates. Lauren had somehow learned the old numbers, probably watching over my shoulder during one of her many financial emergencies. I selected new digits, the year Linda and I were married. Numbers meaningful to us, useless to her. Then came the recurring payments, monthly transfers to her checking account, her car insurance, a gym membership she claimed was essential for her mental health. Each cancellation required confirmation. Each click left a digital record of my decision to stop being her private bank. My hands did not shake. This was not cruelty. It was accountability, long overdue. I remembered the phone call from last month, Lauren sobbing about gambling losses, promising it was the final crisis, swearing she would change. I had believed her. I had transferred another $5,000. I had told Linda we were helping our daughter learn responsibility. Instead, I had taught her that consequences did not apply to her. The final screen displayed a summary. Credit access, removed automatic payments, canceled security information, updated 30 years of enabling undone in 30 minutes. Outside the office window, the neighborhood moved through a peaceful evening. The Hendersons grilled dinner in their backyard. Mrs. Patterson walked her small dog past our mailbox. Normal families, normal lives. I clicked Save. Changes processed. Updated information is now active. I leaned back in my leather chair and felt something unfamiliar when it came to my daughter. Control. Not frantic damage control, not panic-driven problem-solving, calm authority. Tomorrow morning, Lauren would discover that her safety net no longer existed. Her card would be declined, payments would fail. The quiet assumption that my money was always available would end. For the first time in decades, her choices would belong entirely to her. The phone on my desk remained silent, but I knew it would not stay that way. Morning arrived, wrapped in an unusual calm. I sat at the kitchen table with coffee and the newspaper, sunlight spilling across the windowsill where Linda kept her herb garden. For once I felt no anxiety about incoming crises, no dread of manipulative calls. Linda moved quietly around the kitchen, refilling my mug with the easy rhythm of 38 years together. She asked no questions about my night in the office. Her faint smile told me she already knew. The phone rang at 8:15 a.m. Lauren, exactly on schedule. I let it ring twice more than necessary, using the extra seconds to steady myself. "Good morning, Lauren," I said as I answered. "Dad, what did you do?" Lauren's voice exploded through the phone, sharp and panicked. "My card will not work. I tried to buy groceries and it was declined. My car insurance payment bounced. What is going on?" I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "Lauren, I know you sent me that Father's Day delivery." The line went silent for several long seconds. When she spoke again, the panic had hardened into defensive fury. You have lost your mind. How could you set me up like this?" Set her up. Not, "What are you talking about?" Not, "What Father's Day delivery?" Her reaction told me everything. "I did not do anything to you," I said evenly. "I stopped paying for your irresponsibility." "This is insane," she snapped. "You cannot just cut me off without warning. I have bills, obligations, responsibilities." "Responsibilities," I repeated, letting the word hang. "Like treating your parents with basic respect? Like managing your own finances instead of relying on mine?" Across the kitchen, Linda had gone still, watching my face closely for signs of strain. But I felt strangely calm, detached from Lauren's hysteria. "Dad, please," she pleaded. "You do not understand. Evan and I are struggling. Rent is due. The car payment—" "The car payment I have been covering for 2 years?" I interrupted. "The rent that comes directly out of my account every month? Perhaps it is time you learned what real financial responsibility looks like." "Fine," she shot back, her voice rising. "You want to play games? Then do not expect to see your grandchildren anymore. Olivia and Noah will not even remember you by the time—" "Lauren," I cut in quietly, "those threats stopped working yesterday morning." The line went silent, except for her rapid breathing. I could almost hear her recalculating, searching for a manipulation that still worked. "I cannot believe you are doing this," she whispered, slipping into the wounded tone that had emptied my wallet more times than I could count. "I am your daughter. I am struggling, and instead of helping me, you are punishing me for something I did not even do." Something she did not even do. Still no denial, still no confusion. "Your struggle is not my responsibility," I said. "Your choices created your situation. Your choices sent that package. Your choices will decide what happens next." "You're being ridiculous," she snapped. "One little prank and you completely lose your mind." There it was. "One little prank," I repeated. Not a confession, but close enough. A prank involving a live animal is not little, and a father ending 30 years of financial enabling is not losing his mind. It is finally using it. Her voice turned icy. "This is not over, old man. You think you can control me by controlling money?" "We will see," I replied. The call ended. I set the phone down carefully and looked at Linda. She had listened to every word, her expression shifting from concern to something like quiet pride. The sunlight still poured over the herbs on the windowsill. The coffee still tasted exactly right. "She is coming here," Linda said softly. I nodded. "Most likely with Evan. They will want to continue this in person. Are you ready for that?" I considered the question. Was I ready for my daughter to arrive with her unemployed husband, demanding money she had never earned and threatening grandchildren she had already used as leverage? "Yes," I said, "I am." The roar of an engine tore through the calm. Tires screeched as a car slammed to a stop in our driveway, followed by 2 sharp door slams. Linda and I exchanged a look. We both knew. Heavy footsteps crossed the front walk with aggressive purpose. The doorbell rang once, hard and impatient, then again when we did not answer quickly enough. I rose slowly, my pulse steady, despite the storm at the door. "Stay here," I told Linda. "No," she said, surprising me with the strength in her voice. "We face this together." The doorbell gave way to pounding. I opened the door. Lauren stood on the porch, flushed with rage, hair disheveled as if she had thrown on clothes and driven straight over. Evan loomed just behind her, his expression dark and openly hostile. "Dad," Lauren said, her voice trembling with barely restrained fury. "We need to talk." "We already talked this morning," I said, staying firmly in the doorway without stepping aside. "I thought I made myself very clear." "Clear?" Lauren let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "You were unhinged. You cannot just cut me off over some ridiculous misunderstanding about a Father's Day delivery." Even now, standing on my porch, demanding access to money, she still could not bring herself to admit what she had done. "There is no misunderstanding," I replied evenly. "You sent me a live snake." Evan stepped forward, his broad frame taking up more of the doorway. "Look, old man, maybe you did not think this through. Lauren has expenses, responsibilities. Kids need things. Children whose mother threatens to keep them from their grandparents whenever she does not get money," I said calmly. Lauren's face twisted with frantic rage. "Fine. You want to play hardball? You will never see your grandchildren again. Olivia and Noah will grow up knowing their grandfather chose money over family." Those words, once my greatest fear, fell flat now, powerless. I looked at my daughter and realized I was no longer seeing the child I raised. I was looking at a stranger shaped by entitlement and manipulation. "Lauren," I said quietly, "that is not a threat. That is a blessing." Her expression froze in shock. This was not the reaction she expected, not the collapse, not the surrender. Evan's mouth fell open. "You what?" "If you are willing to use children as weapons," I continued steadily, "then maybe it is better they are not exposed to that behavior while they are still young." Evan's face darkened. He stepped closer, invading my space until I could smell the anger on him. "We know where you live," he said lowly. "We know your routines, your schedule. You might want to rethink this." Behind me, I felt Linda tense, but I did not move. "Are you threatening me, Evan?" I asked. "I am just saying family relationships go both ways. You cut us off? Fine. But do not expect us to disappear quietly." "Actually," I said, "that is exactly what I expect. And if you choose not to, then this stops being a family matter and becomes a police matter." Lauren grabbed Evan's arm, sensing he was crossing into dangerous territory. But instead of calming him, it seemed to fuel him. "You think you are clever," he sneered. "You think cutting off money makes you powerful? There are other ways to get what we need." "I am sure there are," I replied. "Getting jobs, for example. People have been supporting themselves through employment for centuries." "This is not over," Lauren hissed, her desperation sharpening into pure venom. "Family does not abandon family. You will regret this." "There already are consequences," I said. "You are experiencing them right now." They stared at me in silence, finally realizing that no amount of threats, guilt, or emotional blackmail would restore their access to my finances. The man who had spent 30 years being their personal bank had closed. Without another word, Lauren spun around and stormed toward their car. Evan followed, pausing only to shoot me one last hostile glare. I watched them drive away, the engine revving far louder than necessary. Only when their taillights vanished did I close the door and turn back toward Linda. Her face was pale, but her eyes held something I had not seen in a very long time. Pride. "We are going to need legal advice," I said. Evening settled into our house with a quiet normalcy that felt newly precious. After dinner, Linda and I sat at the kitchen table, the familiar routine grounding us after the chaos of the day. She cradled a mug of chamomile tea. I held my second cup of coffee. The kitchen had always been where we talked through the hardest things: buying the house, planning retirement, worrying about Lauren's early struggles with money. Now, it held space for the near collapse of our family. "I keep thinking about when she was 8, Linda said softly. "Do you remember the Mother's Day breakfast she made? Burnt toast, orange juice with way too much pulp. She was so proud." I did remember. Lauren in pink pajamas, standing on a chair to reach the counter, determined to surprise us. That memory felt like it belonged to another family now. "She used to draw pictures for us," I said, "stick figures holding hands. I kept them in my desk drawer for years." "I still have some in the memory box upstairs," Linda replied, her voice heavy with grief. "Mark, she is still our daughter, no matter what happened today." Those were the words I had expected to hear all day. Linda's instinct was always to heal, to mend, to search for common ground, even when the ground itself had cracked. That unwavering belief that family could survive anything was one of the reasons I had fallen in love with her. "Linda," I said gently, "she crossed a line, and there is one more step I need to take." She paused, with her teacup halfway to her lips. "What kind of step?" I studied my wife's face. The concern there, the quiet hope that whatever I was considering might somehow pull our daughter back instead of pushing her farther away. I did not know how to explain that bringing Lauren back was no longer the objective. "Something permanent," I said. "Something that makes sure what happened this morning never happens again." Her eyes searched mine. "You are talking about changing the will." It was not a question. Linda knew me too well. She understood that legal boundaries were the only protection left when emotional ones had failed. "Yes." She fell silent, weighing the implications. Altering our estate plan was not just a financial decision. It was a formal acknowledgement that our daughter could no longer be trusted. "The grandchildren," she said at last. "Olivia and Noah deserve better than learning that love is something you buy with money." I reached across the table and took her hand. What she did today was not desperation. It was calculated cruelty. The snake, the threats, the manipulation, those were choices. And if we cut her out completely, we protect ourselves. We protect our marriage from constantly managing her chaos. We protect our retirement from being drained by someone who sees us as a resource instead of parents. Linda squeezed my hand, her thumb brushing across my knuckles. The same gesture that had steadied me through decades of smaller storms. This was not a small storm. "Will it stop her?" she asked quietly. "If you change everything legally, will she finally leave us alone?" "It removes her incentive," I replied. "No access to money, no inheritance to fight over, no leverage. She will have to find someone else to manipulate." The logic sounded cold, but it was necessary. Lauren would move on to easier targets, people who had not yet learned to recognize her patterns. "I hate that it has come to this," Linda whispered. "So do I said. "But I am not spending our remaining years being held hostage by threats. I will not let her destroy what we built together." Outside the kitchen window, the neighborhood moved along in its quiet rhythm. The Hendersons walked their dog. Mrs. Patterson watered her flowers. Ordinary people living ordinary lives. "When will you do it?" Linda asked. "Tomorrow morning," I said. "I will call Margaret Summers first thing. She has handled our legal work for 15 years. She will know how to make this airtight." Linda nodded slowly, accepting what needed to be done even as it broke her heart. "And when Lauren finds out?" She will, I said, but by then everything will already be in place. Her anger will not be able to reach us anymore. I stood and carried our empty cups to the sink. Behind me, I heard Linda's quiet sigh, not disagreement, but grief for the family we thought we had. Tomorrow, I would take the final step. That night, I held my wife and let her mourn. Margaret Summers' law office occupied the third floor of a granite building downtown, its walls lined with thick legal volumes that reflected years of protecting families like ours. I sat across from her mahogany desk with a manila folder of documents, calmer than I had been in weeks. "Mark," she said, removing her reading glasses, "when you called this morning, you mentioned needing comprehensive legal protection. Tell me what has been happening." Margaret had handled our wills, property transfers, and Linda's mother's estate. To her, we had always been the responsible couple who planned ahead and avoided drama. What I was about to describe sounded like a different family entirely. I explained the inheritance argument, the live snake delivery, the canceled credit cards, the confrontation on our porch. Margaret listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. With every detail, her expression grew more serious. "Evan said they know where we live," I finished, "that they know our routines." It felt like a threat. She set down her pen and leaned back. "Mark, this goes well beyond a family dispute. You are describing harassment and intimidation. We need to address this on multiple fronts." "That is exactly what I was hoping you would say." Margaret pulled out a fresh legal pad. "Let us start with your estate plan. You said you want to restructure your inheritance." "I do," I said. "I want my money to fund my grandchildren's education, not my daughter's gambling habits." "That is a very wise choice, Mark," Margaret Summers said, her tone steady and professional. "We can establish an education trust that fully provides for Olivia and Noah, primary schooling, college tuition, and legitimate educational expenses, while completely blocking any access by their parents." She explained the structure carefully. An independent trustee would oversee the fund. Money would be released only after proper documentation for approved educational costs. Lauren and Evan would have no authority, no influence, and no opportunity to manipulate the funds meant for the children. "And Linda?" I asked. "Her protection?" "Completely unchanged," Margaret replied. "Your home, your retirement accounts, her financial security, everything remains exactly as it is. These changes affect only what would have gone directly to your daughter." Next, she opened a separate file and turned to the restraining order paperwork. She methodically documented the confrontation on our porch, the threatening language, and the escalating pattern of intimidation that had finally crossed into something dangerous. "The snake incident is especially serious," she said, her pen moving quickly. "Sending a live animal to frighten older parents shows intent, planning, and malice. Courts take that very seriously." "How long does all of this take?" I asked. "The estate changes can be finalized within a week," she said. "The restraining order can be filed today. Once granted, any contact from Lauren or Evan becomes a legal violation, not a family disagreement." Something inside my chest loosened. A pressure I had carried for months, maybe years, finally eased. The constant vigilance, the fear of triggering another threat, the endless cycle of rescuing and enabling. It was ending. "There is one more recommendation," Margaret added. "You should document everything going forward, any attempted contact, any indirect messages, any effort to involve the grandchildren. If this escalates further, records will matter." "You think it might?" I asked. "People who rely on manipulation rarely accept firm boundaries calmly," she said. "When Lauren realizes she has been removed from the will and legally barred from contacting you, her reaction may be intense." For the first time, that possibility did not frighten me. With legal protection in place, her anger would no longer be directed at two retired parents trying to live peacefully. It would be handled by systems designed to deal with exactly this behavior. Margaret's assistant brought in the prepared documents. As I signed each page, I felt a deep sense of finality. 30 years of financial enabling ended not with shouting, but with ink. "The restraining order should be approved by the end of the business day," Margaret said. "Court officers will serve both Lauren and Evan by tomorrow morning. After that, any attempt to contact you or Linda becomes a criminal matter." I stood, shaking her hand. Outside her office window, the city moved along in its ordinary rhythm. Cars passing, people walking, life continuing. "Mark," Margaret said as I reached the door, "you made the right decisions. Your safety and your marriage come first." I nodded, the folder tucked firmly under my arm. That night, Linda and I slept more soundly than we had in years. The next 2 days passed in a quiet peace I had nearly forgotten existed. Linda and I slipped back into the routines that had once defined our life together. Morning coffee without dread, afternoon walks without checking phones, dinners without crisis updates, no calls, no threats, no emergencies. On Thursday afternoon, Margaret called. "Mark, the documents were delivered at 2:15 today," she said. "Both Lauren and Evan have been officially served with the restraining order, and they have received copies of the updated estate documents. Everything is complete." I thanked her and ended the call, then sat quietly for several minutes, letting the reality settle. Outside the window, Mrs. Patterson planted spring flowers. A few houses down, children rode bicycles along the sidewalk, their laughter drifting through the air. Normal life. "The papers were delivered?" Linda asked from the kitchen. "This afternoon," I said. "It is finished." She came and sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. We did not speculate about Lauren's reaction. We did not debate whether she would try to push back or find loopholes. The law was clear. The protections were thorough. For the first time in 3 decades, we were free. I thought about the daughter I had once known, the little girl who drew stick figure families holding hands, who proudly served burnt toast on special mornings. That child had grown into someone capable of sending a live snake to her father and using grandchildren as leverage. The change had been gradual enough that I had spent years making excuses. But the woman who stood on my porch issuing threats was not someone I could protect anymore. The legal documents had created boundaries that love alone never could. In the end, they got what they wanted. I was no longer part of their lives. The irony was impossible to miss. Lauren had spent years threatening to cut me off from Olivia and Noah whenever I refused to fund her choices. Through her own actions, she made that separation permanent, while losing the inheritance she had been so desperate to control. For the first time in a very long time, I felt peace. Olivia and Noah would be taken care of through the Education Trust, overseen by professionals who could not be pressured, guilted, or threatened. Their tuition, tutoring, books, and legitimate academic needs were fully secured, without giving their parents any access to money they had already proven incapable of handling responsibly. Linda squeezed my hand. "Do you think she understands what she has lost?" "She will," I said quietly. "The restraining order means any attempt to contact us is now a criminal issue, and the will changes mean there is no inheritance to chase, no financial reason to keep even hostile contact alive. She will have to look elsewhere for leverage. And if she violates the restraining order, then it becomes a police matter," I replied, "not ours." For 30 years, I had been Lauren's safety net. Every time she fell, I caught her, so she never learned how to stand on her own. I sold my classic car to cover her gambling losses. I paid her rent when she claimed sudden emergencies. I wrote check after check, always convincing myself that this crisis would be the last one. It never was. The snake had been her final message to me. Everything she wanted to say about our relationship had been sealed inside that box. Dangerous, calculated, meant to terrify and control. It was intimidation, plain and simple. But instead of driving me back into compliance, it drove me to Margaret's office and into the legal protections I should have put in place years earlier. As the sun dipped lower outside our kitchen window, Linda and I prepared dinner together, moving easily around each other like we had before our lives were consumed by constant drama. No phone calls interrupted us. No frantic texts demanded immediate financial rescue. No threats hovered over our heads involving the grandchildren. The quiet felt deep and earned, like the stillness that follows a long, violent storm. Tomorrow, we would wake up in a home legally protected from harassment. Our retirement savings would remain intact, growing for our own future instead of being siphoned away by someone else's reckless choices. Our marriage would continue without the constant strain of managing an adult child's manufactured emergencies. I had reclaimed my role, not as a wallet, but as a father who loved his daughter enough to stop enabling her destruction of herself and everyone around her. Legal boundaries had replaced emotional blackmail. Professional consequences had replaced family guilt. The law had given me my life back. That night, for the first time in decades, I went to bed without wondering what tomorrow's crisis would cost me.